Hello everyone, welcome to 𝐾𝐥𝐻𝐬. We'll be discussing a report published by IPCC, and that is 6th Assessment Report Part 3. Last year, IPCC has started part release of its 6th Assessment Report, and in 2021 they have came up with first part wherein they have analyzed the physical science basis of climate change. That means what are the factors that are driving climate change. In the second part of the 6th assessment report, IPCC has analyzed vulnerabilities, risks associated with climate change, and now in this part 3, they are trying to provide certain solutions for climate change mitigation. And that's why theme of this report is also Climate Change 2022, Mitigation of Climate Change. That is the theme of this report, and this report is published by, or this report is given by Working Group 3 under IPCC. But before we discuss this report and what are the key features that IPCC has mentioned under this report, let us try to understand the background of this report. And firstly, we'll be discussing about IPCC. Firstly, we'll be discussing about IPCC. So, IPCC is established, or it was established in 1988 by World Meteorological Organization and United Nations Environment Program. WMO and UNEP have established IPCC in 1988, and this body is a scientific body. It is a scientific body which, based upon the research conducted by different organizations or different scientists, this IPCC analyzes the research conducted by these organizations, and using that research, they are trying to find out a scientific basis of, climate change. That means what are the factors that are driving climate change, reasons, causes related to climate change. Also, they understand, or they try to understand, the vulnerabilities, risks and impacts related to climate change. And also they are providing us what we can do for mitigation of climate change. What are the solutions related to mitigation of climate change? So that kind of understanding is developed by IPCC, and IPCC publishes these kind of understandings under various assessment reports, which they have started publishing since 1990. And these reports are helping in policy making. They help us in policy making. Various government organizations, various government departments use these reports for policies in their territorial jurisdictions. Moreover, these reports are also helpful for the negotiations under UNFCCC. For example, in 1995, IPCC gave its second assessment report, and that report helped the global community to come up with Kyoto Protocol in 1997. Right? So that is IPCC and its contribution. Now, what are the reports that IPCC has published till now? So till now, IPCC has come up with 5 assessment reports starting from 1990. In 1990, first assessment report of IPCC was published, and the last IPCC's assessment report was published in 2014-15, and that was 5th assessment report. After fifth assessment report, IPCC has also published some special reports. They have also published some special reports in 2018 and 2019. Three special reports have been published by IPCC in 2018-19, and they were related to the climate change and its impact on ocean and cryosphere, climate change 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming, and climate change and land degradation. What is the impact of climate change on land degradation? So these three special reports were published by IPCC, and after these special reports, IPCC has started publishing sixth assessment report, and under sixth assessment report, they have published three parts till now. First part was published in 2021, second part was published in 2022, and third part is the recent or the latest addition to the sixth assessment report, right? So these are the reports that IPCC has published till now. So let us briefly discuss what were the reports, what were the different parts of sixth assessment report. So sixth assessment report part 1 was published in 2021, and it was titled as Climate Change 2021, Climate Change 2021, the physical science basis. The physical science basis. Physical science basis. And under this report, IPCC has said that with current levels of emissions, we will be breaching the target of 2 degrees Celsius set by UNFCCC's Paris Climate Deal, and with that kind of emissions by 2100, that means by the end of 21st century, temperature will be rising by 2.7 degrees Celsius. And this, they have said that is a code, it is a code red for humanity. This 2.7 degrees Celsius temperature rise, they have said that it is a code red for humanity. And that's why there is a need to take action. And that action they have suggested in the form of global emissions should peak by 2025. And thereafter, global emissions should fall only. Right? So that was the first assessment report, first part of sixth assessment report published by IPCC in 2021. Thereafter, in 2022, second part of the sixth assessment report was published by IPCC, wherein they have tried to understand vulnerabilities, risks associated with climate change. And as per IPCC, under this second part of sixth assessment report, IPCC has warned that due to climate change, in next 2 decades, we will be witnessing climate change induced disasters. So what this second part warns, it warns about climate change induced disasters in next 2 decades. And why so? Because as per this report, we will be breaching 1.5 degrees Celsius target by 2040. This target will be breached by 2040. And due to this breach of 1.5 degrees Celsius target, there will be climate change induced disasters that human beings will have to witness in next couple of decades. Moreover, they have also highlighted that even if this breach of target is for a short period of time, that means even if we breach 1.5 degrees Celsius target, let's say for 5 years, even in that case, the impacts that we will have may be irreversible impacts. That means the impacts, climate change induced impacts will be irreversible. And that is one of the important threats highlighted by part 2 of the report. But at the same time, it has also said that we can still take actions for climate change mitigation. And one of the major action that IPCC's 6th assessment report part 2 suggested was adaptation to climate change. And they have also highlighted under this report adaptation, if we are able to make, or if we are able to carry out adaptation to climate change in short period of time, then the cost involved with adaptation will be lesser. And this kind of adaptation will be effective for climate change, will be effective to reduce the impacts of climate change. So that was the highlight of part 2 of the 6th assessment report. Now let us discuss the part 3 of 6th assessment report, which was released recently. And under this part 3 of the 6th assessment report, IPCC has, so let us discuss key findings. So what are the key findings as per IPCC? So as per IPCC, right now we have witnessed 1.1 degree Celsius temperature rise than pre-industrial level because of the emissions since pre-industrial level. So right now we have increased temperature, global temperatures by 1.1 degree Celsius. So that is first. Moreover, in 2019 or between 2010 to 2019, we have higher average emissions compared to previous decades. So in this decade between 2010 to 2019, the emissions were higher than previous decades. But at the same time, this report also highlights the rate of rise of emissions is falling. It is falling. That means whatever emissions that we had, let's say in 2000, between 2000 to 2009, they were higher than the rate of rise between this particular decade was higher than the rate of rise between 2010 to 2019. Also, IPCC under this report has given the emissions of 2019, and in 2019 the emissions were 56 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. 56 gigatons of CO2 equivalent was the emissions of greenhouse gases in 2019. And if we want to reduce the temperature rise, if we want to achieve Paris Climate Agreement's targets, then there is a need to reduce temperature, there is a need to reduce this global emission by 43%. By 2030. By 2030, this emission, this global emission should reduce by 43%, and then only we'll be able to achieve the targets that are set by Paris Climate Deal. That means by 2030, these emissions should become 30 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. And in that case, we'll be able to achieve the targets that we have set for Paris Climate Deal. Right, so these are certain highlights of the report. Moreover, this report, IPCC's 6th assessment report, also says that to keep global temperature rise between 1.5 degrees Celsius, there is a need to peak global emissions by 2025, and in the subsequent decades, there should be reduction in the global temperature rise by 2050. In subsequent decades, that means till 2050, there should be reduction in global emissions. And in that case, if we are able to achieve these kind of targets, then only we will be able to will be able to achieve the targets that we have set under Paris Climate Deal. Right? So these are the key findings. Apart from these key findings, IPCC under this report also highlights the role of developed countries, especially countries in North America with respect to climate change. So North America has the highest share in the global emissions, and that share is of 23%. And if we take into account per capita emissions of North America, then per capita emissions are 15 tons of CO2 equivalent annually. And if these emissions, if per capita emissions of people living in North America are compared with people living in Africa, then it is almost 20 times higher. So that is also the highlight of 6th assessment report part 3. That means it is developed countries, especially North America, which has contributed highest in the global emissions. And that's why it is their responsibility to start taking actions like picking off GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, by 2025. Right? Also, this report highlights the lack of commitment of developed countries under UNFCCC's towards financing the mitigation and adaptation in developing countries. Right? That means developed countries have not followed their commitment. They have not given the finances as per the IPCC's, as per the commitments that they have given under UNFCCC of $100 billion. So that kind of commitment is not followed by developed countries, and that is also hampering adaptation and mitigation measures in developing countries, especially in least developed countries. So these are the key findings of this report. Now let us discuss greenhouse emissions that this report highlights. So we have already discussed the greenhouse emissions are higher than the previous decades, but rate of rise of greenhouse emissions is declining. That means in 2000 to 2009, we have higher rate of greenhouse gas emissions, but in 2010 to 2019, the rate of rise of GHG emissions have fallen. So that we have already discussed. Moreover, this report has also given the contribution in various sectors. So what are the different contributions of various sectors? So 33% greenhouse gases are coming from energy sector. 34% of greenhouse gases are coming from energy sector. Then 24% greenhouse gases are contributed by industrial sector. 24% from industries. Then 22% of greenhouse gases are coming from agriculture, forestry, and other land use. Right? So that is the contribution of agri, forestry and other land use sector. Then 15% contribution is of transport sector, and 5% is the contribution from buildings. Right? So these are the contributions of various sectors which are discussed under this part 3 of the report. 34% of energy sector, that means energy sector driven by coal, oil and gas, they are contributing highest as far as GHG emissions are concerned. Then 24% again from industrial sector. Then 22% from agriculture, forestry and other land use. 15% from transport and 5% from buildings. Right? So these are the contributions of greenhouse gases by various sectors. And this report also highlights the role of urban areas in greenhouse gas emissions, because it is these urban areas which are driving increased emissions, especially from developed countries. And this report says that 10% of the households which contribute highest to the greenhouse gas emissions are contributing almost 34 to 45% of the emissions annually, right? So 10% of the households are contributing 34 to 45% of greenhouse gas emissions annually. So that is the contribution of 10% of households, right? So these are the contributions of different sectors. Moreover, this part 3 has also highlighted regional contributions to greenhouse gas emissions, wherein they have said that least developed countries are contributing only 3.3% of greenhouse gas emissions. 3.3%. Then 41% of the global population is living in those areas where contribution to where per capita emissions is less than 3 tons of CO2 equivalent. 41% of the global population is living in those countries where per capita emissions are lesser than 3 tons of CO2 equivalent. And India is also in this category. Moreover, 48% of the global population is living in those countries where per capita emissions are more than 6 tons of CO2 equivalent. 6 tons of CO2 equivalent, right? So there is a clear divide between developed and developing countries as far as greenhouse gas emissions are concerned. And that's why this report has highlighted the historic responsibility lies with developed countries, right? So these are the regional contributions to greenhouse gases. Now, after highlighting all these key features, this report is also suggesting certain measures to mitigate climate change, because part 3 of the 6th assessment report is about mitigation of climate change. So what are the suggestions for mitigation of climate change as per this report? So first suggestion is modeled mitigation strategies. That means those strategies like use of renewable energy, ensuring energy efficiency, reduction in non-CO2 emissions, then use of carbon removal technology, All these are the measures that we can take for mitigation of climate change. Use of renewable energy is one of the important measures. And this report also highlights that the prices of renewable energies have fallen. And due to fall in the prices of renewable energy, the adaptation of these energies, adaptation of this kind of technology has also increased. For example, they have said that the prices of solar energy since 2010 have fallen by 85%. Prices of wind energy since 2010 have fallen by 55%. And the prices of lithium-ion batteries again since 2010 have fallen by 85%. And due to this price fall of these different kinds of renewable energy technologies, there is increased use of these technologies, these forms of energies. For example, solar energy's adaptation or use has increased by 10 times, and use of electric mobility has increased by 100 times, right? So due to fall in the prices, there is more reliance on these kind of technologies, and these kind of technologies are important for mitigation of climate change. So that is the first suggestion given by this report. Next, second suggestion is about shifting development pathways in urban spaces. Urban spaces are driving climate change, and that's why there is a need to shift the way of living in urban places. And this shift can be achieved through use of renewable energy, lesser reliance on private transport, and apart from that, behavioral change as well. Behavioral change is the new aspect highlighted by IPCC's 6th assessment report part 3. Behavioral change. What kind of behavioral change can help us in the mitigation of climate change? So they have highlighted two. First is use of plant-based diet, and second, cycling and walking are the measures which will reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, and those emissions will reduce. So these are the two behavioral changes suggested by IPCC's 6th assessment report. Next, they are also suggesting use of digital technologies. Use of digital technologies like Internet of Things, sensors, robotics, artificial intelligence can drive energy efficiency, can increase energy efficiency. It will help us to reduce the demand of energy, and those demand side mitigation will be able to carry forward. But at the same time, it has also highlighted that the use of digital technologies should be highly regulated, because if we are not regulating the use of digital technologies, then there will be certain side effects, adverse side effects that we will have to face, right? So these are the suggestions given by IPCC's 6th assessment report for mitigation of climate change. And if we are able to implement these kind of mitigations, these kind of suggestions on ground, especially in developed countries, and if those developed countries are following their commitments of $100 billion finances annually to developed countries and least developed countries, then we'll be able to ensure climate change mitigation, right? So these are the different types of suggestions given by IPCC under its report. But it has also highlighted the challenges. What are the challenges related to this report, the mitigation of climate change? First major challenge is finance. Lack of availability of finance, especially in developing countries. And due to this, due to a lack of availability of finance in developed countries, we are not able to shift towards renewable energy. We are not able to use those kind of devices, those kind of equipments which are energy efficient. So this is the major roadblock as per the 6th assessment report part 3. Second, carbon capture and storage technology has not proven its viability as of now. Moreover, this kind of technology is right now costly, and its scalability is also questioned. And this is the challenge to achieve various targets set by different countries, because various countries under their nationally determined contributions for the achievement of Paris climate deal, they have committed net zero emissions, let's say by 2050, 2060 and 2070. And these challenges are important challenges that we will have to take into account to achieve the targets that we have set. So one of the important challenge is technology related to carbon capture and storage is costly. Its scalability is questioned, and also viability of this technology is questioned, right? Moreover, there are gaps in the policies And due to these gaps in the policies, again, it would be difficult for us to achieve climate change mitigation, especially in developing countries. Especially in developing countries. Right? So these are the different challenges. And lastly, they have also highlighted the challenges related to innovation. Innovation in developing countries is right now at nascent stage, and due to that we are not able to come up with technologies which can help us in climate change mitigation. So these are the challenges that are highlighted by IPCC for mitigation of climate change, right? So that is about this report. Thank you.